Okay, class, we're going to tackle some of the concepts that are in your handout number 1, homework exercise number 1. But as an introduction to that, we're going to talk a little bit about the videos, etc. So I got some feedback from other classes that have taken this class that it was difficult to follow the location of my cursor on the screen. So I've changed to this red cursor, and I've added the cursor click sound in, so hopefully it's a little easier to follow where the clicks are taking place. I've also upgraded the microphone that I'm using, so I'm anxious to hear feedback from the class on both of those things. Handout number 1, homework exercise number 1, is an influence chart assignment for a decision that Boeing is trying to make between building a much faster aircraft that carries fewer passengers versus continuing to build the higher passenger, lower speed aircraft. Your assignment is to build an influence chart. Take the things that you learn about the decision-making matrix from the homework question and put those relationships on a piece of paper. In this case, we're going to draw it in Excel. And also add your own thinking to it. Think your way through what other variables should I be considering for this business model. There is no absolute right answer when you build an influence chart. I am not looking for something very specific. What I am looking for is for every student to spend some time and energy thinking about the relationships between the decision variables. This kind of thinking will help you build a better model in Excel long term and tie your formula relationships between different types of data together in a more structured sort of a way. So with all that said, let's take a look here at this particular one. So I've gone ahead and started building an influence chart for the particular homework problem. And you can see I've got a few variables up here. I'm going to start by talking about the decision in the middle. The question is, do I want that high passenger low speed plane, or do I want the low passenger high speed plane? That's something I think we can quantify a little bit more. Some of that is in the homework statement, but we can quantify that better as we go on. Next, we know that there's some basic decisions that come with any business decision. The idea that units that I sell are related to the cost to produce and the revenue, and a mix of cost to produce and revenue is what drives my long-term profit. So I want to start tying these things together in my mind. In order to do that, let's start drawing in Excel. So to draw in Excel, I'm going to start with an arrow. I'm going to go up here to Insert, click on Insert, click on Shapes, and right down here, there's an arrow. If I click on that, now my cursor changes. If I come out here to an existing shape, you can see if I hover near it, anchor points suddenly appear. If I press and hold my left mouse button, my cursor will change slightly, and then I can drag where I want the arrow to end, and when I get near the other object, it'll have some additional anchor points. And when I release there, it'll automatically be associated with those anchor points. Well, that end didn't click, so I dragged it. Now, I don't like this little skinny default blue arrow that appears, so we're going to click on it. We're going to change what it looks like. There's a few ways to get to the desired menu options. One is you can right-click on this, and down at the bottom of your choices is the idea of format shape. Okay. Another is if I'm at home here, if I click on a drawing object, it automatically pops open the option to format the shape. So shape format, that entire menu set suddenly appears. And here under shape styles is a drop-down dialog. I think that clicking on that and using the full dialog box is the easiest way to edit a shape inside of Excel and inside of a lot of Microsoft products. So in this case, I'm going to take a look at my color. I'm going to want it to be black. I personally like big chunky lines when I'm drawing in Excel. They're easier to see. They don't end up blending in with just like cell borders that way. So I'm going to turn that up to 2.5. Then I'm going to scroll down, and the end arrow type, I'm going to pick this really big pointy one. And the end arrow size, I'm going to pick my biggest option. So now I've got an arrow I like a lot better. It's a lot easier to see. I can tell where it starts and ends. Once you've got an arrow you like really well, you can close that dialog box. If you click on the arrow, you can press down and hold the Control key and press C for copy. And then if you press and hold Control key and press V as in Victor, it will paste an extra one. If you prefer the mouse commands, you can click on one, right-click, click Copy, click where you want to go over here, and if you click your paste options, is destination, theme, source formatting, and picture. It doesn't make any difference between the first two, just don't pick picture. Okay? If you Pick picture, it'll convert it into a non-editable object in most versions of Excel. Once I've got a few arrows on the page so I can work with them, I can click and drag, and I know that revenue is going to feed into my long-term profit. I know that units sold is going to influence my revenue. I know that cost to produce influences my long-term profit. So now I've tied those in. Now, I'm looking also, and I know that demand for seats is going to be a variable that feeds into some things, and it might feed into many places. But in this case, I'm going to press Control V again, make another arrow up here, and give you guys a little more time here to see how I'm dragging this. When your arrow is selected, your grip points appear, and if you hover over it, your cursor will change. Press and hold your left mouse button to drag that end of the arrow to where you want it. Same thing, hover, click and hold, drag and release. Okay? So the demand for seats is going to influence revenue. I personally think demand for seats might directly influence the choice between the planes. I may have to have too many seats to sell to even consider the high-speed option. So I've got a lot of things I have to think through. Let's draw some more. Let's put another shape up here so you guys can have some practice. So let's go back to Insert, Shapes. This time I'm going to do a triangle. Okay, so I'll pick my triangle, put it here next to the other triangle, and it draws it right side up, no matter how hard I try to draw it upside down, which is fine. It gives me a chance to show you guys a couple other things. So once I've made it about the size that I want, this little hoopty arrow in a circle at the top, that is the rotate grip point. So if I hover my cursor over that, my cursor turns into one. Press and hold my left mouse key and drag my mouse in a circle till my arrow is oriented the way that I wanted it, or my triangle is oriented the way that I wanted it, and then release. Same thing, I can right click and go to Format Shape. It opens that dialog box that we saw earlier. I'm going to say no fill. I want this completely clear. But the line around the edge of it, I want to turn it black. The line around the edge of it, I want to turn it up to 2.5 because I like those chunky lines. And now I'm happy with my triangle. And yes, I see that it's slightly different than the other triangle there. I'm not concerned about that. I just want to get some drawings out here. All right, let's do another insert. Let's insert this time, again, shapes. We're going to pick a text box. Text box, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to drop it right out in the open for a minute. So what I know is, I went ahead and drew the double circle, which implies an input variable that is either random, very hard to predict, or undefined so far. So if you've got a variable you're trying to put into your model and you have no idea whether that's going to be a linear variable, a nonlinear variable, continuous, discontinuous, it might end up being just a scalar number. It might be an integer when you research it. If you really don't know, you might show it this way. And I'm going to show in that box, I'm going to say compatibility with existing airports. Okay. Then I am going to put that text centered top to bottom and centered left to right. I'm going to grab here and drag and make my box a little more appropriate size for the amount of text I put in there. Whoops, I made it disappear. There we go. Then I'm going to grip the box, drop it on top of my other drawing, and there it is. And now once again, I want to change what it looks like a little bit. So to show you guys the other way, I'm going to scroll up here to Shape Format, do that drop-down dialog box again. The biggest thing here is I want to get rid of the fill. And I want to get rid of the line because all I'm really interested in is the text. Close that dialog box, and now I've put that in that drawing. As I begin to think through the model further, I'm going to ask myself some tougher questions. How can I quantify this? The statement of the problem quantifies what do we mean by high passenger and low speed. It'd be good to put that actually on this influence chart. I believe personally that one of the biggest things going to drive this decision is this input variable up here, consumer perception. What is the value of speed? As you build your own model, take the time to quantify a few things, calculate a few things. It might be interesting to ask yourself, what are some of the most common flight paths in the world that a faster aircraft might be interesting? And between the two aircraft, what is the difference in the time to fly there? Because one of the questions you might be asking yourself is, what is the real value to the consumer for an offering like this? Now, I'm going to go ahead and click over to the other tab that I have open, where I've built this same model out a little further already. And I've said to myself, you know what? I did quantify that up here. What's the consumer perception of value? This faster aircraft, Chicago to Paris, could do it in 5.7 hours. The slower aircraft, Chicago to Paris, would take 11.8. What does the consumer think about what is that value of that roughly 6 hours that they would save? Well, a business traveler might say to themselves, wow, if I can get there that fast, I can save on one night's of hotel cost in Paris. That's significant. Paris is an expensive city, so somebody might be willing to pay another $300 or $400 or $500 on the airline ticket if that meant that they didn't have to pay for another night in Paris. Now, my personal preference would be to spend the extra night in Paris no matter what, but that's for this model, we're going to say that some consumers don't think that way. You can see in the decision box in the middle, I went ahead and added some of the details out of the question. That 747 can carry 550 passengers at 350 miles per hour. The supersonic aircraft can carry 350 passengers at 725 miles per hour. I've been thinking through it some more and saying, surely these two aircraft will cost different to manufacture. Surely these two aircraft will have different time to manufacture. And the assignment you have in your homework is this. You can start with the model that I've begun, or you can start with your own thinking. But what I want you to do is spend some real time and some real energy thinking through what are some of the other variables that might make sense to make this decision. There is no absolute right answer. I will grade this based on evident effort. You can also see up here, I started making a list for myself. What else might be interesting? Avoid that night at a hotel, for sure. What are alternate ways to travel? What are these costs in terms of dollars and in terms of time? So what does the average consumer think that their time is worth? How much more are they really willing to pay per hour of time saved? That may be a function of how much that consumer earns. So in the homework, you're going to take this exact problem and flesh it out further. Then there's a second influence chart homework problem that I want you to start from scratch. Take your time. Spend time really thinking about the relationships between each of the possible variables and the decision points. Make sure that you email me if you have questions. I will make sure that we also have a Q&A session put on the calendar very soon. Good luck with this homework assignment, and I will talk to you soon.